Welcome back! Yes, we're back. N=5 in N+1 days of MvvmCross. Sorry about the short break. Had some problems with Xamarin activation, which meant I couldn't demo anything. But hopefully they are now behind me, and hopefully we'll be back to demoing. So what I'd like to cover today is, first of all, we've got a new build. We've got 3.05 on NuGet, and that's got some big improvements. Thank you, Daniel Playstead, again. But it's got some big improvements in NuGet, which I hope to show you. But I'd also like to talk today a little bit about ICommands, so particularly about button click and touch up inside and all those sort of press actions. And I'd like to move on from our simple one-page demos to 2, 3, 4-page demos. So let's get kicking into this. So File, New, Project. What we'll do is we will create it in N+05 because we're on there. And let's call this the multi-page demo today. Let's do a multi-page. Multi-page, and it's multi-page.core that we want to produce first because it's our portable class library. So all of this you've seen before. You know, nothing too surprising there, I hope. We hit OK. We get to choose Mango and higher, Mono for Android and Mono Touch, or the Xamarin twins as they are now known. You can zoom in, you can see those. We hit OK. It generates the project for us. We delete class 1 because it's useless. We manage the NuGet references, and we find a package called MvvmCross. And there is actually, rather than using Hot Tuner Starter Pack, although you're very welcome to use it still, there is actually just an MvvmCross package now which references the same thing. So we include that, and that generates a to-do folder which really doesn't contain anything of use or interest to us. And it includes, you know, the references for MvvmCross in the project, but more importantly, it's got app.cs and firstmodel.cs, and really importantly now, those guys you no longer need to fix up these namespaces because of the fixes from Daniel. So app is just going to start this first view model. First view model has just got this hello property in there, and what we'd like to talk about today is adding ICommands. So ICommands are essentially actions, so the things the UI can trigger in the view model. And so let's just set up one of those, and I've got a snippet again to set one up. It looks a bit long and wordy setting up an action like this. There are shortcuts for it, which I will talk about later. But let's just call it. Our first action is called myCommand, just from the snippet. What we'd like to do, you know, so there's this kind of a routing through here. You can see how you create a command and how eventually it gets routed through to this action. So when the user does something like press a button, we'll end up calling this code. And what I'd like to do is, so we've got a property called hello, is when we get do my command called, we're just going to add world onto the end of hello. Yeah, and that's our action. So let's see that it actually occurs, shall we? And to do that, we'll just build this to prove it works. The first view model, yep. We'll close all those windows, get them out of the way. What I'll do is I will start with Windows Phone, because Windows Phone is kind of the fastest place for me to develop. And so this is going to be called multipage.phone. And we'll target Mango, because I've got the Android simulator running as well, and that doesn't play nicely with Hyper-V. And in the properties for this guy, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set the simulator to Mango as well, just so that when I do run it up, it goes there. Right, so we've got multipage.phone, and it's just a standard template. What we do is remove main page from it, because we won't be using the standard main page. We then add a reference to our core project, just like that. We then want to add MvvmCross to it. So we go to NuGet, we take a look for that MvvmCross package, and that we should find somewhere down here, and we just install it. And now what you should see is we've got a to-do folder which we'll need a little bit from. We've got our setup, and probably what you didn't see from the earlier tutorials is we now actually do include a first view by default as well. So there are a couple of things we still need to do. We still need to include this setup of the root frame in the constructor, and we still need to include this block in application launching. So let's just go across to app.xml.cs. And here we should be able to see, okay, so we needed here a var setup equal new setup. And this is going to be root frame. and setup.initialize. That's that done, and then application launching we just need to replace with that other block. So that's just copied in like that, and you can see all it really does is actually call app start on startup. So that's done. Right, so now we should be able to run this up if we needed to, because first view by default will have some XAML in it for us. Let me just show you the XAML it has by default. And let me also change its name to first view. So you can see it's got hello in there as a text box and hello as a text block, and you can hopefully see that also in the UI designer. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to add a button. Let me see if I can do it from this. I'm not very good at using these designers, but let me see. So I add a button in, and then this button, I'll go to the properties, and I would like to set its command. Where do you reckon that is? It must be in miscellaneous, do you think? So I'll set its command to a binding, or how do you do this? You do a binding, create data binding, and its binding is to data context, and the path is to my command. Did that work? So we've now got a data binding set for it. Let me just check out what that did. You can tell I never used these, so all it did was create that text there, and I'd have been much faster doing that without the designer. Sorry. But now if we run this up, hopefully we should just get to see it. So debug start new. And when we run this up in the designer, in the simulator, so we've got hello MvvmCross, and it's bound to 2 places, and you know, if we just do it to hello MVVM, the binding works. If you then hit button, you get the world added on because it's gone via the my command in the view model. The my command just says hello equals hello plus world, and that does it. If we hit it again, we get world at the end. So that's it. You can see that works, and that's how an ICommand functions. Let's add another UI to this guy. So let's add a Droid project next. So we're going to go to Android. We'll create an Android application. This is called multipage .droid. Visual Studio spins it up. We've got an activity in there. Oops, we don't really need to know about betas that could be coming out. We've got an activity in there that we'll delete because we don't need the default activity, and its layout will delete. What we should then be able to do is we should be able to add a reference to the core. So there it is. Yeah, it's just the core project we're adding a reference to. And we should also then be able to add from nuget, we should be able to add MvvmCross. So MvvmCross. And again, it'll be down the search list just because it's a new package, this empty one, but it won't be down there for long. Okay, so that's done. And you can see that now we have this set up. And what we've added in is there is a to-do folder, which really doesn't have much in it anymore for us. But what we do have is we have a splash screen, and we have a setup with the names. The namespace is now set, thanks to Daniel. Thank you, Daniel. I'll say that a few more times. We also have a first view, and again we have the namespace set. And we also now have the AXML, not XAML for it. Oh, and I've opened the other designer. And this guy, hopefully when it loads, loading layout. When it loads, you should see it's got the XML in there. One other thing here you'll notice, and this isn't down to Daniel, this is down to somebody called Cheese Baron. Thank you, Thomas. We're now using something called Res Auto, so you don't have to edit that anymore either. That'll just pick up the local space. So you can see what we've got here is we've got an edit text and a text view. And shall I try using the design surface? So underneath those two guys, what I'd like to do is I would like to add a button. So a button presumably is quite straightforward to find. It's a form widget, and I'm going to add it at the bottom here. And what we'll do is in that button, we'd like to bind it to click. So you can see it's got a text of button, and I'll change it to click me. And what we'd like to do is we'd like to bind its click to that command. So we take a look at this, and we say, right, so for the button to click, please call my command. And that should now just run up. So if we do a debug start new, then it's building. Hopefully it'll ask us what emulator to use. Still building, thinking about it. So it's asking which emulator. We choose the Intel one. It's packaging it up, sending it across to the device, and deployed. Is it going to run for us? Just waiting for it to start up. I'm not sure. Failed to forward ports. That means something else is occupying its attention. Let me just try running that again and see if it does any better second time. I may have to restart Visual Studio or close something in the background. So this time it's worked. That was just a debugger problem there. Right, so here you can see we've got this, and if we delete the cross part of MVVM, you can see the data binding works. If you hit click me, you can see we add the world. So that's how ICommand works within Droid as well, so you can see it working. Let's add another UI to this as quickly as we can. So we're going to add the Touch UI. So we're going to go to iOS, and we'll choose again an iPhone project. I promise soon to start looking at iPad projects and universal projects as well. For now, let's just get some basics done. So we add multipage.touch, hit OK. It goes off and hopefully builds a project for us. And exactly as before, right, so we're going to get rid of my view controller because we don't want it. We're going to add a reference to the core. Done. We're going to use nuget to add a reference to MvvmCross. You can do this from the nuget command line as well, and that's partly why I've now got the shorter name. I'm not going to update my SDKs at the moment. Hopefully that's not going to be a problem. It might be yet, in which case I may have to pause the recording. And you can see now we've got, MvvmCross added. We've got to-do folder. One of the things from the to-do folder is that we have to copy across this guy to overwrite the app.delegate that's there. So that's done. So after we've done that, we can delete him and we can delete the to-do. Hopefully I know everything that's in there. And we've got our first view. And our first view at the moment just has a label, you can see there, and a text field. And then it has binding for those. And what we'd like to do is underneath the label and the text field, I'd like to create a button. So let's do it. Button equals new UI button. And I'm going to do this slightly differently to doing the rectangle there. I'm actually going to create here a button type rounded rect, which is the type of button that you see quite often in Touch. And I'm going to then set the title of that button to be just do this. So the title of the button is going to be "Click Me." Although really, you don't click in monotouch projects. You actually touch them or touch up inside. You don't really click, and that's its normal title. And then I'd like to set its frame. So button.notFont frame equals new rectangle F, and then that's where I pass in these parameters. So hopefully you can see that's it, and then I'll add that to the screen, except I do need to position this slightly lower down, so I'm just going to position it beneath those label and text field. And then to add the binding for this, all I do is set.bind, and I add the binding for the button. So if that went too quickly for you, go back and watch some of the earlier tutorials. But all I'm doing here is I'm binding the touch up inside method of the button to the MyCommand command handler, action, delegate, whatever you want to try and call it, on the ViewModel. So I hope that's not too hard to follow. Again, all I've added here to the basic template is a new button, which I've created as a round rectangle, so it's got smooth corners to it. I've then set its title. I've then set its frame, so its position, and I've added it to the screen. And then I've also just bound the button's touch up inside to the ViewModels command. So hopefully this should build. So let me set it as the startup project. Let me select iPhone Simulator. Hopefully it will let me select the Retina iPhone, because I think that's what I've been debugging in. And I think I can build it. Let me check. And then what I should be able to do, and let me just connect first of all. So I'm using, as I say, tight VNC viewer at the moment to connect to my Mac. got a password on it, just in case anyone else on my local network is trying to connect to my Mac. And hopefully I can get into my Mac. So it's locked at the moment. Let me unlock it. Right, so once I'm past all of these login screens, you can see I've got an awful lot that's on the screen. So let me get rid of some of these guys off the screen for you. So hopefully you can see all of these guys are just in the way. Right, so somewhere here I should actually have what I'm looking for, which is my simulator. And let me make the simulator a little bit bigger to see. And so here's the simulator, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to run on that simulator from Visual Studio. So I do debug start, and we cross our fingers that it can talk across the network. And hopefully it's going to go over there, and it's going to deploy. And I don't know what this one was actually called, but hopefully it'll appear. Right, so this is hopefully it running up. And when it does, you should see we've got these two things, and one of them we can edit. We need to. So again, we could pull it back if we wanted to hello MVVM. And then what should happen is when hello MvvM. What should happen, it's a nice completion for me. What should happen is when we hit click me, it adds world each time. So there's our command running as well in iOS. So that's our first kind of hint about how to do ICommand, and how we can actually create actions that come off of touch events of some description within the UI. Let us now actually just extend it a little bit further. I could add a Windows Store project in. I'm going to add a Windows Store just to keep all of my projects consistent. This will only take a few seconds. Let me add Windows Store, and I'm going to add a blank app. It's called multipage.store, and this is nothing exciting for you because you've seen it done in phone and all the other projects. So let me just add the core, and let me add nuget for MvvmCross. Again, I'll add the easy package, which is that one. Done. And then what we should be able to do is there are a few to-dos to do. So it's saying in onLaunched we want to get this little code here. So we go to app.xml, and in onLaunched here we add that little bit of code. And then what we probably also want to do is we do have some basic XAML included in the template now. But what we'd like to do is we'd like to have a button as well. And so this button is going to have a content, which is going to be click me, and it's got a command, which is binding go command. I didn't use the designer for once. So now hopefully, was it go command? It was my command. So hopefully this should now run up for us, and we should be able to see the same effect in a Windows Store project. Did I forget any steps? I don't think so. So you can see we've got our bound text at the top, and obviously you have to tab away for it to work. And if we hit click me, hopefully you can see the worlds being added onto the end. So that's our final platform just quickly added, just for completion. But now we've done that, let's start talking about actually using ICommand to do navigation. So I'm just going to do a very simple navigation to start with. So we've got our first view model, and what I'd like to do is I'd like to find a way of actually showing a new view model, showing our second view model. And to do that, what I do is I add a new class. So let me add it. And this class is not too surprisingly going to be called second view model. So we add it. And obviously it should be public, so we'll add public to it. Because, not pubic, sorry about that. And obviously, in order to make it a view model, we're going to inherit from MvvmViewModel. And we use ReSharper to do that. So this is view model. Let's just give it a property. And this property is going to be underscore name, say. And let's just give that name a default property called second, as default value called second. want to do that propagation. So all we've done is create a second view model, which is just a class, inherits from MvvmViewModel, and we're going to call it second. Now, how do we get from first to second? And the answer is that we're going to add another ICommand. So let's just add that in. And so we're going to add it here, and I've got my snippet for CMVX. And this ICommand we're going to call we're going to call it go second command, because it's going to be go to the second. So go second command. And so we're going to call it do go second. Obviously you can use a shorter form of this if you don't want redundancy all the way through. And so this sets up our go second command, and then we need to actually do the action that is the go second. And to do this, what we use is we use a base class method, and there's a base class method called showViewModel. Yeah. And what it is it's a generic method, and it takes as its generic type the type of view model you want to show. So in this case, we want to show a second view model, and so that's all we do. We call showViewModel and second view model, and that is the action to go to the second view. So with that done, we should be able to compile the core, build, done, and then we should be able to go through our UI projects and just add the views to correspond to those. So let's do it. It looks like we're starting with Droid, and in Droid what we do is we want to add a second view. So I'll just go to first view, and I'll literally copy and paste from first view to second view. And obviously the layout for this one, we will use a second view layout. And then I'll put it into its own file just for neatness. And then over in the layout for Droid, so you can see we're just in the XML layout, I'll take first view and I'll copy it. And I'll call it second view. And then I don't really want to use the Android designer, I'd much rather use my XML editor at the moment, so I'll open it up. And here I think the only thing we had at the moment was that text for name, so I'll just add the text for name, and hopefully that should show for us. And then just to show that we're on a new page, what I'm going to do is I'll make the background for this page different color. So to do that, I'm just using some hints from Android, and it's Android background equals, and I'll make this one a dark red, so that'll be a hash 400000, so that's just dark red. And so with that done, hopefully we should be able to actually run Droid. So let's do a debug start new, and you can see that all we've used for to link second view to second view model is just its name. That's all we've done, and hopefully we can run up the Intel emulator, and hopefully it'll package and there won't be any of those forwarding port problems. Synchronize the assembly, deploy succeeded, running up. Hopefully. Let me just check. I didn't have. No, it should be running. No, I'm not sure it ran. Let me try it again. Debug, start new, Intel. It's feeling temperamental. So we're going to run up our application. When we get there, we get to these guys. There was obviously something I forgot to do, so I can still run my previous demo without any problems, but I don't actually have a button on the screen to press to go from first to second, so let me add it. So we've got all our existing things, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to add another button underneath, and I'll give that a label of go to second. And the command that this links to in the view model was called the go second command, so that's what I'll put into the XML. So you can see the binding for the second button is going to have a click bound to the go second, and now when we run it up we should actually be able to go to the second view. Let's see if this works. And I should have also been able to set the default property, the default device, which would sped things up. So we've got our existing things, but if I hit go to second, then what you get is you get the second view, and it's got second, and if you've got very good eyesight you can see that is actually a dark red screen, but obviously I think I chose too dark a red. So that's our navigation working in Android. and you can see we can use the back button on the device to go back, and we can go backwards and forwards as many times as we want. Okay, so that's Android done. Let me show you some of the other platforms working as well. And what I will do is I'll make that second view just a bit brighter red, so let me set that to 80 rather than 40. But let's go back to phone, as that's the next one on the list. And all we need to do in phone is add a second view. So we add a new item, it's a phone page, and we're going to call it second view so that it matches second view model. And then we need to get hold of second view, and we need to change its type from a phone application page to an MVX phone page. If you've watched the previous N+1s, you'll know all about this, so I'm not going to explain it any further. And we do that in both the XAML and in the C#. And then the only things we need to do in here is we want the background for our second page to be a dark red. We'd like the title to say seconds so that we know we're on the second page. And then let's just add a text block in here. Let's make the font size reasonably large, 64. And then let's bind the text binding, and that's bound to name within that view model. So I hope you can see that. It's just binding the text to name. And then we should be able to run up this guy in the emulator. And what we should see, again I've forgotten to add a button to go from first to second, so let me go back. And in first view, as we said, we've got our text box, our text block, and our button to do my command. Now we also would like a button to go to second. So this was called a go second command. Was it a go second or a go to second? Let me just check. Go second command, so I got the right name. And this one, so the first one should be called click me, and the second one should have a caption of go second. And now when we run up this project, hopefully we should see that we've got this existing functionality. We can do hello MVM, we can do click me, and if we hit go second, we actually navigate to the second thing, and that's got all its bound properties. You can use the back button on the device to go back, forwards and back as many times as you want to. So that's navigation done simply in phone. Let me add the next one. The next one is store. Now this one we've got a little bit more work because we haven't done the common files yet, but let's just add it in. So we're going to add a new item, which is going to be a basic page, and this is going to be, again, we're just using naming convention, so it's going to be second view to go with second view models. It's going to ask us about these common files, so we're going to add them. And then, because I haven't persuaded Tim Hoyer about how to add these second, I'm just going to add them. It's thinking about adding them. Right, so it's adding them. Because I haven't persuaded Tim Hoyer yet to change these templates, I will work on it somehow. Gosh, it's taking its time to add those. It's telling me I can continue working while the designer is loading in the background. I could close it. Right, so hopefully it's added them now. So the thing we need to do in here is this designer. We don't want to inherit from page, we want to inherit from an MVX store page. And the other thing that we need to do in here is just these process lifetime managements. Let's just remove this whole navigated to, navigated from stuff that it adds to the mix. So now we've done that in second view here, we should be able to add any XAML we want to. So in particular, we would like to take the entire page and we'd like to give it a background. So let's try and do that. Background equals, and it's dark red. So we're going to give it a dark red background. And then what we'd like to do is just add some content. So I will just copy the content directly from the Windows Phone. So that's the content copied in. And what we should now be able to do, I guess we could also change the title of the page if we wanted to. Second page. What we should now be able to do is actually run this guy up. So let's give it a go. Debug, start new. And again, for the third project in a row, I have forgotten to add to the first view. So we need a button to go from that first page to the second one. So what we do is first view. And what we do is we just take a button template like this. And the first one says click me. The second one says go second. And it's bound this time to the go second command. And so what we should now be able to do finally is to go debug start new. And so we've got our binding exactly as before, and we can edit hello MVVM down. We can hit click me and it'll add world on each time. If we hit go second, it navigates to the second page, and the second page is data bound. You can go backwards and forwards as many times as you like. So that's the navigation sorted in 3 of our 4 platforms now. So let me end that, and what we should finally be able to do is take a look at iOS. And in iOS we want to do again a very similar type of thing. So let's just take our first view, which is this guy, and let's copy and paste it to a second view. So all I'm doing is I've taken the text of first view, I'm replacing it with second view, and then in view.did_load, do we have a dark red? No. In view.did_load, I'm going to set the background color of the view to red, and I'm just going to leave the label in there. That's it. And the label I'm going to bind to name. And again, we've got a few things here to sort out in terms of second view being bound to a second view model. And that's it. So our second view looks very simple like this, and I'm just going to put it in another file again, just to move it out of the way. And then this time, so that's our entire second view, it's just got this label on it. This time I am going to remember that I need to add another button. So I'm going to take that button template, I'm going to add a second one. So this is button 2. And it's a bit further down the screen, so I'll just add in 130 rather than 90. And rather than saying click me, it's going to say go second. And then we need to sort out the binding for this button. And so the first button was bound to ICommand. The second button is button 2, and it's going to be bound to go second command. Like that. So that's the UI sorted out for touch. And what we should now be able to do, as long as I haven't messed anything up, is we should be able to run it. And hopefully over on our remote Mac, we should see it run up. Yep, it's still running up, so here it runs up. And you can see we've got our binding from before still works. And if you click me, you get world added. And if you hit go second, you get to that second page, it's red, and it's got the data binding. You can go backwards and forwards as many times as you like, and you can see it's fully working across on the Mac. So that's a second page added. I think I'll go one little step further, and I'd like to add one more page to each of these projects. And this one, what I'd like to do is I'd like to go from second view model, and I'd like to go to a third view model. So what I'll do is I'll add in a public class third view model. Sorry, it's a bit small on the screen. And again, to make it a view model, all we're going to do is inherit from MvvmViewModel. And within this one, let me put in a property, and this property is going to be called the answer. And what we'd like to do is actually have this as a kind of property that comes as part of the navigation. So what I'll do is I will create a init method for this. So init is a reserved function name within a ViewModel. Just looks like this, public void init. But what you can do within an init is you can pass in parameters. So the very simplest way of passing in parameters would just be to put in string foo, and that would allow you to pass in a parameter called foo. But what we want here is probably we want to pass in the question. So I'm going to pass in a question, And then when you get that question, you can use it. So I will here, I'll put the answer equals I don't know plus question. Yeah, so that's the answer that our third view model is going to give at this stage. So I'll put third view model across into its own file. And what we then need to do is work out how we're going to navigate to the third view model, passing in the question. So back in second view model, let us create a command. So again, I'll use my snippet to create that command. And this is going to be a go third command. And this is do go third. And then once we've got it, we need to work out here what we're going to call. So we can, if we need to, we can call, show view model with third. And that's exactly how we navigated from first to second earlier. We just called show view model with second. But what we need to do is work out how we're going to pass across the question. So what I'm going to do is very simply, I'm going to pass it across as a new object. So if we do a new, and so it's a question that it's expecting, question equals what time is it, then that should get called across. Now one technical thing that happens here is new curly braces question. What that's doing is it's creating a new anonymous class, and the compiler generates that as a internal class, so it generates it so that nothing outside of the of this particular assembly can see it. And what we need to do is we need to be able to see that externally. So one technical thing we have to do if we're using this method of navigation is we go across to assembly info, and what we do is we actually add another of these assembly attributes, and what we do is we pass in assembly and its internals visible to, and we just pass in the name of the MvvmCross assembly, so it's serious.mvvmCross, and that enables us to actually build and run the assembly and to use that navigation technique here. So you can see we've got that parameter there of what time it is, and that should be hooked up to go third. So very quickly, let's go through some of our projects, and we'll start with second view. And so second view, now we need to add a button, so I'll just add it. I could use the designer to do this, but I'm already here, so I'm going to just copy these things. It's going to be a button. It's going to have a text within it of go to third. And obviously what it's going to do is it's going to have a local MVX bind, and what we're going to bind is the click event to the go third command. Go third command. So hopefully you can see that when we click on this button, we should be going to the third page. And then what we need to do within the views is obviously add the third view. So I'm going to take second and copy its contents to make a third. So it's a view for the third view model. And obviously I'm not worrying too much about visual styling here. This is very much a prototype project. And we make sure we use the third resource. So that's the third view model, C# written. And then what we need to do is just take the XML and copy that as well. And so the third view is only going to have one bound property in it, and that bound property is the answer. So let's just take it, and let's not use an edit text, let's use a text view. And that text view is just going to have a binding on the answer. So let's just quickly run this up, and hopefully you'll see the navigation path that we've done. See, it's binding, it's building, sorry, not binding. It's deploying across to the emulator, hopefully. Well, it started, it claims. It's waiting for me to choose an emulator, that's why it's taking so long, sorry. It's packaging the application, copying across, synchronizing assemblies. So when we run up, we've got our first page as before. Yeah, and we can edit this if we want to. We can, oops, do these, click me, etc. We then have our go to second. We go to the second page And we can then go to the third, and when we go to the third we get our answer, which is I don't know what time is it. And you can see we go all the way through, and we can go all the way forwards again. So that's how we do navigation in Droid, where we pass a parameter in. Obviously, and I'll come back to this I guess in a later N+1, you don't have to have that as a fixed string. You could have it as a parameter of some value that's on the screen, for example an edit text or something. So there's that done. Let me now do the same thing for the other projects, and then I promise I'll stop and shut up for a little while. So what we need to do is we'll go across to phone, and in phone what we'll do is we will create a stack panel in this second view, and in the second view we will then be able to have our text view and our button, and our button is going to have a label of go third, and it's got a command of a binding of a go third command. There's no reason these things have to end in command, it's more convenient to in terms of being able to read the code later, and that's all I'm doing there. So that's our stack panel in the UI. So now let's add a view for it. So we do add new item and a view, and we'll call it a third view. So we create this thing. Again, the very first thing we have to do is change this to an MVX phone page. You can set up your own templates if you'd rather not do this every time. The file export template is very useful for that, but for now I'm just going to keep going. And then we do a file and we change it to an MVX phone page. So that's changed in both the C# and in the XAML. And then let's change the background color of this guy to a dark cyan. That sounds like a good color. We'll change its title to third, and then we will add the text block, and we'll turn text wrapping on just so we can see the whole of the answer, and we will bind its text to binding the answer. So that's our UI done, hopefully, for the Windows Phone project. Oh no, I've messed up the syntax, so this should be an MVX phone page, and now hopefully this should run up. So if we debug, I didn't mean to step into. So we've got our UI, and if we edit this, then we should see the binding work, and the original ICommand works. We can go to our second page, and on our second page we can go to our third, and on our third hopefully you can see you get I don't know what time is it as the answer. And again, you can go backwards and forwards many times as you like, and that's how it puts together. So that's our second platform done. Let's move across to iOS and do a third. No, next one in the list is Store. So let's do our third platform, which is going to be Store. So again, all we have to do is add a new view. So we do add new item, basic page, because that's the type of page we'd like to do. And it's called a third view because it's going with the third view model. We don't have to change its inheritance because it's coming from layout aware page, and layout aware page has the third view as its has the MVX store page as its base. So we just change its title to third, and we'd kind of like to change the color as well. So let's do a background equals dark cyan because that was a very nice color. And then we'd like to just add a stack panel. So what I'll do is I'll go across to third view in the Windows Phone, and I'll just use the same XAML because it works quite well. So here it is, and we should here be able to have the answer. So that's in there, and let me just change the text size as well because it's going to be way too small on the screen. So font size equals 64. And then the only thing we haven't done is in second view we need to add a button. So I'm going to do that. So I have to add a stack panel, and within the stack panel I'll add text block, and I'll then add underneath it a button, and again I'll set the font size equal to 64. The caption on this button content is going to be go third, And the command, so what it's actually going to do is a binding, and it's a binding to the go third command. So hopefully you can see that button should work, and it should go off to the third screen. So when we run this up, let's see if it works. Deploys across, we've got our first screen. We can edit that text as we have before. And you get a world. You can hit go second, it goes to the second page with data binding. Hit go third and it goes to the third page, and it gives you your answer, including the question itself, which has come from the parameters. So you can see how that's worked, hopefully. And as before, you can go backwards and forwards as many times as you want. So hopefully that's okay. Hopefully that's a simple enough explanation of how it's tied together. One last platform to do, and then I will be quiet again for you. And this one is going to be the second view. It's going to be the third view, so let's just take second view and copy it. So this is in iOS we are now. And we will take third view. Let me make sure I get its name right. Third view, and then we change it in the bindings as well. Third view, and then all we need within this is we want to see the answer. So hopefully you can see there. That should be our third view, except we also wanted to change its color, background color to cyan. So that's third view done within iOS. Obviously, to actually do a nice UI within iOS, we would probably use something like the Zib designer to actually do it more properly, but for now that's okay. Back in second view, we then need to add this button. So I'm just going to copy the button code so that we don't waste too much time. So I'll copy the button code here, and the only thing I need to change is where it's positioned, which is going to be at 50. And this button is going to say go third. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a binding for that button, and the binding is on the second view model to the go third command. So I went very quickly there, but I hope you can follow. All I've done really is add a third view, and I've added a button to the second view. So we should be able to run this one up. Debug, start new. And we should, across on our Mac, hopefully see that this will deploy and it will run. Claims to be doing something in the background, so it's running up. And we've got our first view as before, and we can edit this first view and remove things and add world. No worries about that. We can go to a second. We can go back to the first if we want. Go to the second. Don't worry about the animations being a bit jittery here. That's just because I'm using a VNC server. So I'm just using a virtual desktop. And what we should also then be able to do is go third. And when we go to the third, you should see the second half of this here as a question that's been passed across. And again, we can go backwards and forwards as many times as we want. So that was a slightly longer demo than before. But I hope that what you've seen throughout this multi-page experiment is that, first of all, I hope you saw that we can just do within a single view model. You can do commands that manipulate your properties, that call off to services, that do whatever else needs doing. I hope you've then seen that you can navigate to another view model just anonymously without passing any parameters. And then I hope you've also seen that you can navigate to another view model again, and this time you can pass across parameters. The type of parameters that are supported are just very simple ones, so things like strings, things like integers, GUIDs can go across, but that's basically it. So I hope that demo's kind of made sense to you. Welcome back to N+1. I will try and get them better and more succinct, and I hope that's a good intro to you to the world of multi-page, and to seeing kind of those whole screen navigations on Windows Store, Windows Phone, Xamarin.Android and Xamarin.iOS, all within MvvmCross, all using portable class libraries as the core. Okay, thanks a lot for listening, and I'll be back soon with another one, I hope.